Segment 2 of the Chris Richman Show for Friday, May 2nd, 2025 is on. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. All right, we've got a lot to get to this segment. Not a whole lot of time to do it, so let's jump right in, shall we? I've been meaning to do this, and I keep forgetting every segment. I keep forgetting to mention this, and it's driving me nuts. I want to throw a suggestion out there, and I'll put it up on X too, because, well, why not, right? If the Trump administration really wants to do something that'll be huge for the 2A community, right, for the Second Amendment community, if they really want to do something huge, how about this? We can't overturn just, with an EO, an executive order, the NFA, the National Firearms Act. We can't do that. It's not legal. You couldn't do that legally. So what if, and I'm just positing here, what if we were to say, that $200 tax stamp fee that you guys have, that you have to pay, right, when you submit for a suppressor or to register a short-barreled rifle or short-barreled shotgun or whatnot. What if, and I'm just spitballing here, what if we, instead of taking that straight away, what if we just refunded it to you? What if we just did that? So you would pay, let's say you wanted to Form 1 something, right? To make an SBR. You have like an SP5, HK SP5, and you want to Form 1 it to make it a short-barreled rifle instead of a pistol, okay? What if, so you go through and you write your little check, right, to the ATF for the $200 for the tax stamp, okay? And instead of them, straight away cashing it, or, they probably would have to cash it because it's the law, but then they issue you a check back for the $200. Make the tax stamps free. I think that'd be a really good thing. I think you would see a bump in economic activity in that sector. Definitely. So anyway, that's my idea, is refund the tax stamps. Like I said, I'm going to put it up on X, but we'll see. All right. Now that that's out of the way, let's go on to the next topic. And this is something I was going to hit last hour, and I didn't get to do it, sadly. But Stephen Miller is rapidly becoming probably my favorite person in the world, simply because he is bloody amazing. This was from Right Side Broadcasting Network, by the by. And James Woods had a comment on this. Stephen Miller is the assassin the leftist lapdogs of the legacy media dread the most. He exposes their pathetic inability to tell simple truths day after day after day with a terrifying lack of pity. Love this guy. I agree. Let's hear what Stephen had to say from this particular interaction.
Most of your papers never covered her story when it happened. To the extent that you covered it at all, it was because President Trump forced you to cover it by highlighting it repeatedly over and over again. He had to shame you into covering it. And each and every one of you that sides over and over again with these MS-13 terrorists, to the extent that you have the financial means to do so, you all choose to live in condos or homes or houses as far away from these kinds of gangbangers as you possibly can. If I offered any one of you a rent-free home with no taxes to pay in any of these gang neighborhoods, and I said your neighbors are MS-13 terrorists or Mexican mafia or Sinaloa cartel or Tren de Aragua, I couldn't pay you to live there. But yet you, with your coverage, are trying to force innocent Americans to have these people as their neighbors.
It's true.
And that one day their daughter may be abducted from their home and raped and murdered.
Yep.
So you're not going to get an ounce of sympathy from this administration or President Trump
for
the terrorists who've invaded our homes and our country.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love that guy. I mean, like James Wood said, love this guy. He's fantastic. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He calls them out. calls them the pieces of you know what they are. I have no problem with that. None. Well done. I just wish there was more of that, honestly. Yeah, wow. That's pretty good. So that's kind of the high point for right now. Now let's go and look at some really, really stupid things, shall we? Just to kind of change pace a little bit. We had the high point. Now we're going to kind of, but we'll be back. It's okay. It's all right. All right. The Firearms Policy Coalition posted this, and it is regarding a lawsuit. I don't see the name of it right off the top of the. Here, hold on. Let me see if I can find the name of this thing. CS versus McCrum. There we go. So this is what the court found, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. In an FPC-supported lawsuit, I'll read the tweet straight out. The Sixth Circuit has ruled that a public school did not violate the First Amendment when it banned a student from wearing a come-and-take-it hat with an AR-15 on it during the school's hat day, saying that, quote, school officials made a reasonable forecast of a substantial disruption based on its provocative nature and, quote, or subquote, picture of an automatic weapon, end subquote, which both stood to worsen the student's shooting-related trauma. Are you kidding me with this right here? I mean, seriously? So let me ask you this. If there's a rape victim that's in this school, right? A kid who was raped or has suffered through some kind of sexual assault. When a kid wears a picture of, say, for example, P. Diddy or something like that, or something that could be portrayed as sexually oriented, or sexually biased, we're going to rule against that too. If that person, let's say it was a male, and this person was raped by another male, are we going to ban rainbow shirts? Are we going to do that? Because that could remind that kid of the incident. And just to be clear, I don't want people to ban rainbow shirts. I don't want people to ban this hat. You either believe in free speech or you don't. There is no profanity on this. AR-15s are protected under the Constitution. They are a firearm. So how are they not violating the First Amendment? There's no profanity. Again, there's no profanity. There's no violence on there. Like, come get me and I'll shoot you. No, it's merely saying and using, come and take it. Talking about the government. You want it? Come and take it. FAFO. Now, if it said FAFO on it, then yeah, I would probably be, you might have a point. But still, free speech. It didn't say, wow, that seems like a good idea. Again, this is just absolutely stupid. Absolutely stupid. Let's read the actual thing here. Plaintiff's comparison also assumes that the modest depiction of a man holding a hunting rifle outdoors, as seen on the state seal and flag, would carry the same risk of a substantial disruption or material interference in school activities as the hat's prominent display of an AR-15 style weapon. There is a clear difference between these two portrayals, especially in light of the upsurge in school shootings carried out using AR-15 style weapons and the potential for young children to have an acute response after surviving, witnessing, or otherwise feeling the front row impact of such a tragedy. Let's see here. Given the hat's graphic and slogan, school officials made a reasonable forecast of a substantial disruption based on its provocative nature and picture of an automatic weapon, which both stood to worsen the school's shooting-related trauma. Okay, so I'll tell you what. If I send, let's say my youngest went to Moses Lake School District here, and I sent her, I had a picture of a lever-action rifle, and she was going into Frontier Middle School. A lever action. That's a hunting rifle, right? Right? Hunting rifle, Okay? Classic, Old West. That to me would be a little more provocative than this here. Now, here's why. That lever action gun was what Barry Lukaitis used to shoot up Frontier Middle School back in 1994 or 5 or whenever it was. It wasn't an AR. It was a lever action, 30-30. This is the dumbest thing I have read in a very long time. It is literally idiotic. I can't even imagine.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
That's right. I agree, 44. It's pretty stupid. Again, do you support the First Amendment or do you not? I mean, if this kid wore a Palestinian flag, would that cause a problem? Or what if he wore the Star of David or the cross? Would that cause a problem? Because guess what? Those are protected by the First Amendment. So is this. This is absolutely idiotic. I mean, let me put it this way. This is the slippery slope right here. If the Supreme Court upholds this, you're going to see, you will see censorship and violations of the First Amendment in schools like you've never seen before. Guaranteed. Anything conservative. Make America great again. Firearms. Take your pick. Hell, wearing a nitromethane dragster shirt, right? With the flames and stuff shooting out the sides. Oh, that's giving me the vapors because of, climate change. So-called climate change. You see where this goes? This is the slippery slope. Unbelievable. All right. Next up. Actually, you know what? Let me check something here because I want to make sure I'm not missing anything because I have a sneaking suspicion. No, we're good. Okay. Goodness. Whew, thank goodness. Next up. Where are we? Oh, yeah. So Trump, Mr. President, President Trump has gone through and said, you know what? I'd like to see the ATF. I'd like to see Congress cut the ATF's budget by at least 28%. Now, that's interesting. So let's see here. This is from Gun Owners of America, by the way. Program change from 2025 dollars in millions enacted. Let's see here, minus $468 million from the ATF. Let's see here. The budget bolsters the Second Amendment by cutting funding for ATF offices that have criminalized law-abiding gun ownership through regulatory fiat. Well, no offense, that's the entire ATF. The previous administration used the ATF to attack gun-owning Americans and undermine the Second Amendment by requiring near-universal background checks, subjecting otherwise lawful gun owners to up to 10 years in prison for failing to register pistol braces that make it possible for disabled veterans to use firearms, the imposition of excessive restrictions on homemade firearms, and the revocation of federal firearms licenses, which will shut down small businesses across the nation. The budget prioritizes resources towards illegal firearm traffickers, fueling violent crime and crime gun tracing that state and local law enforcement need to track down dangerous criminals such as MS-13 gang members. Now, I would add to this, for those of you who keep forgetting this, don't forget, President Trump's administration was the one that tried to ban bump stocks, or did rather ban bump stocks temporarily. So this is good. I like this, but at the same time, that $200 refund fee, that would be a great thing. Going after the NFA as a whole would be a really great thing. Because here's the thing. It's not just the previous administration that's been doing this. It's anybody who is a law-abiding citizen trying to buy parts for a firearm, or, why can't we buy fully automatic firearms? Why? We'll give them to Ukraine. So you really want to do this, get rid of the ATF entirely. The only thing the ATF should be doing, honest to God, right now is approving Form 1s and Form 3s and Form 4s. Basically approving NFA regulation stuff. Getting that done and out the door. That's it. That's all they should be doing. The FBI has their own SWAT team. They don't need ATF on that. That's not beer, by the way. It's soda. The FBI doesn't need the ATF to investigate things. They have their own investigators. I mean, it's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, I just, like I said, and it's funny because a lot of people are talking about this and saying, this is all fine and good. We need more than this. We need more than words on paper. We need actual effect. And the same thing with the budget itself, which we'll get to here in a little bit. So again, okay, but we need something else. Canada. We talked about how Canada is freaking out right now. Okay. And we'll talk actually two stories here. It's funny. The so-called Native American groups up in Alberta are having a cow right now, absolutely melting down. The Saddle Creek Cree Nation had this, that, they sent this worded deal, which is basically a threat to kind of, well, let me put it this way. It sounds very much like a threat to the government of Alberta. Saying that, it's not your land anyway. Well, yeah, it is actually, because we fought a war, you lost. Sorry. And it wasn't even we. Our ancestors and your ancestors fought a war. Your ancestors got their asses handed to them. No offense. I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to wind people up here. I'm just stating the facts. Same thing here in the U.S. We had, your ancestors and my ancestors, sometimes the same group in that case. My great-grandfather was apparently had some Indian blood in him, American Indian blood or Canadian Indian. But they fought a war and they got their butts kicked. And guess what? The U.S. won. And I've always had a problem with that. Well, we got the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Why? Where else in the history of the world has the defeated party had a say in things? I'm just curious. Do you really think, for example, if Hitler had won World War II, do you really think that he and Tojo and in Japan, do you really think they would give a flying fig leaf what the U.S. thought? Or Great Britain, or France? Yeah, no, they wouldn't have. Nope, wouldn't have mattered a whit. It would have been whatever they wanted. Now, I will say this, I'm glad we didn't go through and just, say, well, all right, you fought against us, you lost, you're dead, off with their heads. That's crazy. But traditionally, that's how it's been. So, I don't know that I'd get too all big in the britches, especially when there's 12,000 people in this nation, supposedly. It's not your land anymore. It hasn't been for generations. So just remember that. Now, that was story number one, okay? Story number two. Let's see here. So this is from Rebel News, and it's talking about people in Nanaimo, BC, British Columbia. They're reacting to Prime Minister Mark Carney's win on Tuesday. So this is during the day. So again, I'm reading from this story here. When it was mostly baby boomers and retirees were present, and almost all were really happy with Mark Carney's win, but they couldn't explain why. Now, if this sounds familiar, it should. Let's hear this, shall we? Hopefully this will come across. very much hoping.
Katrina Panova for Rebel News in Nanaimo, BC, the day after the federal election, and I'm out here to get people's reactions to the election outcome. Now, it is the middle of the day, so
Outside of TD
the people that I
Ameritrade
ran into
office.
were of a certain age demographic. A lot of them were retirees and boomers, and, well, their reaction is something that may or may not surprise you. I ran into one young person. I was hoping to get a bit more reactions from people that are under the age of 45, but alas, they're all at work, I guess, working really hard in order to try and get ahead in Canada. Anyway, here's what people had to say. Hi, guys.
Now she's showing.
Can I get your thoughts on the results of
footage
the election from last
people
night?
Who are stoners walking around.
No? Did you guys vote?
Yeah. Carney won, so
Is that a good thing?
yeah, it's a good thing
Why did you vote for Carney?
because he makes most sense out of people. So,
What makes the most sense to you from his policies?
I don't know.
Is there one specific policy that you were really interested in of his?
No.
So
Okay, thanks for your time.
All right. Bye bye.
Oh, I'm very happy.
You're happy?
Yeah, the
You're-
only thing is I wish that it would have been a majority government.
So you voted for Mark Carney then?
Yes.
Why did you vote for Mark Carney?
He's virtually a genius in finances
virtually
and whatnot.
genius.
And he has a lot of past experience. And right now, dealing with the U.S. and their president is going to require somebody with a lot of experience.
Pleased overall.
Pleased overall?
Pleased overall, yeah,
So you're happy Carney got in?
absolutely.
What was the important reason for you to vote for Mark Carney?
He comes across to me as somebody that is trustworthy, has a plan, both domestically and internationally, and those were two important points for me. And in the balance of things, I just had a more positive vibe from what he put out in the world.
So again, and it goes on for a while. I'm not going to play the whole thing clearly, but this is not surprising. Now, you can't. Nobody there. And granted, there may have been somebody later on in the deal there, but nobody could name what this guy actually does. What is one of his policies? You know, what is his policy? And the fact, by the way, now see, my follow-up question would have been, so did you vote for Justin Trudeau? And if they said, no, I didn't vote for Justin Trudeau. Okay, so Carney's in the same party, right? Yeah. So what this convinced you that Carney is going to be different from Trudeau? You see, and I mean, the gal stayed very neutral about it. Her tone wasn't, I can't believe you voted for Carney. What the heck? It was as neutral as I think it could be. But my question would have been, first off, is did you vote for Trudeau in the last election? Because I'm willing to bet these people look, and as long as they see Liberal next to the party, that's who they're going to vote for. They don't actually think it through. We talked about this the other day. A lot of people, were not super duper thrilled with George W. Bush because he wasn't really all that conservative. I was one of those people. I thought he was better than Gore or Kerry, but I mean, if it comes down to it, had someone like Zell Miller won, boy, it would have been tough. I might have had a hard time with that. Certainly, like for example, if Trump hadn't won, and let's say Jeb Bush was the nominee, right? And goes up against Tulsi Gabbard. No offense, I think Tulsi's probably more conservative than Jeb Bush ever thought of being. Just saying. And I mean, neither of them is super duper conservative, but comes right down to it. At least I know Tulsi's going to do what's best for the country. Probably. Jeb, not as much. Not as much, sure. Anyway, I thought that was interesting too. And again, it goes to kind of show you how how liberals are liberals no matter where you are. All right, let's go to a quick music break, and we will be right back, and we'll talk about some more liberal insanity. So we'll be right back. All right, here we go. Back for more. All right, so let's talk for just a second here about some California things. California, this is hilarious. This was in the Sacramento Bee. Now, if I said there was a poll about supporting armed police officers in schools, and again, this is in California, what do you think the response would be? Now, if you said that your thought is okay, well, they'll be completely 100% against that, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that. After all, it is California. Well, here's the crazy thing. According to this poll, and this is published by the Sacramento Bee, again, Katie Wolf, April 30th, so yesterday, most Californians support armed police officers at school, new poll shows. A cop for every school? I'm reading from the article here. A new Public Policy Institute of California poll has found most Californians and public school parents would support having an armed police officer on campus to protect students. According to the poll, 35% of adults polled said they strongly support the idea. 36% say they somewhat support it, 17% somewhat oppose, and 11% strongly oppose. Support is higher among public school parents. Well, no kidding. About 1,600 adults, including 279 public school parents, were surveyed. So they weren't even in the majority, the public school parents, and yet it still was high. Now, it doesn't surprise me, said Assembly Republican leader James Gallagher, Republican Yuba City, who has authored Assembly Bill 68, a bill that would put an armed school resource officer at all California schools. I talk to people all the time who say we need, better security at our schools, right? I wish it weren't the case. Well, no kidding. The same survey found about 7 in 10 adults were concerned about school shootings happening in their local school. Gallagher said he's been working on the issue since the 2017 shooting at Rancho Tehama Elementary School in his district. He said he believes an armed school resource officer could have intervened earlier to stop the gunman there, as well as in last year's shooting at the Feather River Adventist School, also in his district. However, Gallagher says AB 68 won't be heard this year after the chair of the Committee on Education, Assembly Member Al Miratsuchi, Democrat Rolling Hills Estates, elected to not give it a hearing. Instead, it will become a 2-year bill. Well, of course they didn't give it a hearing because it would fix a problem. I mean, why would anybody be surprised that when it comes to a bill that would actually fix a problem, a Democrat doesn't want it heard? Duh. Now, what would really solve the problems, and again, this is asking way too much of California, would be to actually allow teachers to arm themselves. Because guess what would have solved this shooting issue potentially even faster than a school resource officer? A teacher with a firearm, potentially. And again, I'm not saying just go, hey, Bob, Sally, here you go. Here's your gun. Go out to school. Have fun. No, I'm saying they need to go through a training course. They need to be certified. This certification needs to happen twice yearly. Okay. At least twice yearly. I would say, probably twice yearly. And they need to score acceptably. Have it be the same qualification course that, a SWAT unit goes through. It needs to not just be your rank and file. No, this needs to be elite level stuff. Reason why is these are people that are around kids. They need to be, you need to have full confidence they will be at the best of their ability if they're handling firearms. So I like this. I like the fact that, that they're thinking about it. But again, I don't know why anybody's surprised the Democrats have put it on hold. Now, Murasuchi's office says Gallagher pulled the bill after it became clear there would not be time for it to be heard this year. School resource officers tend not to be a favored option among those who advocate against gun violence. Well, no kidding. Again, it solves the problem. On its website, Every Town for Gun Safety, which, by the way, is they are liars in the highest degree. I'm going to say that. Just, leave it at that. Says, quote, SROs, that's school resource officers, don't stop school shootings, but research has shown that SROs can harm students in various ways, including criminalizing typical youth and teen behavior. They don't stop school shootings? Really? Then what does? Because it's not taking away guns from law-abiding people, clearly. So what would? If someone breaks into a school and starts shooting the place up, what's going to stop the person? Ultimately, it's going to be either the police themselves coming, with the SWAT team, and we saw how that turned out in Texas there, where they stood out there like a bunch of idiots. I could use some crass terminology to describe it. Stood out there while the guy killed people before, going in. Or you could confront the person in the hall and off them, or neutralize the threat, or at least attempt to neutralize the threat. But again, that would solve a problem, and we can't have that. Let's see here. And then it goes into other things too. They talk about the stupid so-called assault rifle ban. Idiocy. Anyway, so that is the stupidest statement. The fact that statement wasn't dismissed out of hand is crazy. They don't stop shootings. Criminalizing typical youth and teen behavior. Like what? Notice how they don't explain what that is. Anyway, I'm glad at least that somebody is putting out something that, illustrates at least a modicum of common sense here. Because, wow, that is becoming, sadly, increasingly rare. All right, let's move on. Veterans Day. President Trump has put forth, this was put out today, it's from the Wall Street Journal, Trump to rename Veterans Day in tribute to World War I victory. Also plans to designate May 8th as Victory Day for World War II. President Trump said he would rename Veterans Day as Victory Day for World War I and designate May 8th as Victory Day for World War II to celebrate U.S. military victories. In a post on Truth Social, the president wrote, quote, "We won both wars. Nobody was close to us in terms of strength, bravery, or military brilliance, but we never celebrate anything. That's because we don't have leaders anymore," Trump wrote. "We're going to start celebrating our victories again." May 8th, 1945 was the date on which fighting in Germany officially ended in World War II, although the conflict continued to rage 4 months in the Pacific, claiming hundreds of thousands more lives. Now, I would have done it instead of VE Day, which is what they call it in a lot of our allies. I would have done it on when we beat the Japanese, when the Japanese surrendered. That's when I would have done it because, well, that's when World War II actually ended. But whatever, it works. I just, a lot of people died, building up to the atomic bombs. Anyway, Trump didn't say whether he planned to make May 8th a federal holiday, and there was no executive order accompanying the announcement. The move could raise questions about President Trump's commitment to U.S. military veterans. In March, Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins said the administration was aiming to cut tens of thousands of workers from the VA, one of many targeted as parts of efforts from the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency to reduce costs. Veterans Day, celebrated annually on November 11th, was originally established as Armistice Day, following World War I to honor U.S. veterans who served in the conflict. It was later broadened out to honor all U.S. military veterans and became a federal holiday in 1968. The move to consolidate Veterans Day as a specific celebration of World War I could be seen by some as excluding U.S. service members who fought in other wars such as Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq. I don't see it that way, but I can see that point, right? Why not just leave it as Veterans Day? Have a VE and VJ Day, victory in Europe, victory in Japan. Have those separate. I don't necessarily think you have to make them federal holidays simply because those folks weren't taking holidays when that happened, right? But this is one where I'm kind of, I don't know if this is the best thing to do for that exact reason. I do like to celebrate the wins, but at the same time, like with World War II, how many people got shunted from Europe over to the Pacific to participate in fighting against Japan? So, I don't know. We'll see. All right. Let's see. Also, President Trump, he unveiled a new budget. Of course, NBC News was all over this. They were having a cow about this. President Trump, Trump unveils budget slashing health, education, and clean energy programs while growing military. That's the title. The subhead is the largely symbolic budget blueprint, which it is. I mean, this is just the president recommending things. It's not a finalized budget by any stretch of the imagination. That comes out of the House. The largely symbolic budget blueprint sent to Congress also calls for boosting spending on Trump's other priorities. Now, this is interesting, like border security and a Make America Healthy Again initiative on healthy living. So he's not cutting health. He's actually cutting one side and adding to the other. Got it. President Trump released a budget proposal Friday calling for a mix of cuts to domestic programs involving public health, education, and clean energy, while seeking to increase spending on his priorities like border security and a bigger military. The 40-page request was addressed to congressional leaders and accompanied by a letter from the Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought, addressed to Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, so-called Republican, she's not really, the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Overall, Vought said the proposal contains a 23% cut, equivalent to about $163 billion, in discretionary funding and a 13% increase in military spending. Now, if that increase in military spending is to get our, military better equipped, for example, like with, get the aircraft carrier, build outs done quicker, submarines, that kind of thing, then it's good. If it's just, let's see here, we're going to, do the next generation squad weapon, and then, we're not going to really do it, and then, we'll maybe do it, and I don't know. There's a rumor that's on the chopping block, by the way. A lot of money wasted on that if that's the case. Anyway, the House budget comes as the Republican-led Congress is seeking to craft a massive bill for Trump's priorities of tax cuts, higher spending on immigration enforcement and the military, spending cuts in other parts of the federal government, and this is the part I disagree with most, and a debt limit increase. So I guess my big thing on this is no debt increase, none, zip, zero, no debt ceiling increase whatsoever, period, the end, full stop. If Congress cannot figure out how to make things work with the debt limit that we have right now, then they should all be fired. Honest to God. I am tired of selling the future generation down the drain. And that's what we're doing, by the way. Every time we raise the debt limit, we're selling our kids, our grandkids, and everybody else that's going to follow us down the road. We're throwing them down the drain. We're kicking them down the stairs, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're doing. Make no mistake. That's what we were doing. So I guess my suggestion would be, okay, great, send that, but get rid of the debt limit increase. You want to make the mega people and the conservatives happy, the people who got you into office, get rid of that crap. We don't need it, we don't want it, and we sure as hell don't want to see it in the budget. All right, let's move on to another thing here. Katie Hobbs. Now, it's funny how liberals will freak out when they get mad at something, but then they'll do the exact same thing, and they'll not understand why you get mad about it. So, case in point, Katie Hobbs, the Arizona governor, supposedly, even though there's a lot of sketchiness about that, she is refusing to send nominees for director at state agencies to the GOP led Senate committee that has to vet them. Hobbs said on May 2nd that she would not send any, this is from Arizona Central, by the way. Hobbs said on May 2nd that she would not send any new nominees to Senator Jake Hoffman, a Queen Creek, say that 10 times fast, Republican who leads the Senate committee that vets those nominees before confirmation. The Democrat governor said Hoffman was a, quote, indicted fake elector motivated by a political agenda and conspiracy theories. She sounds nice and sane. Oy. I'm quite frankly done with Jake Hoffman and his agenda. Yeah, well, a lot of Arizonans are done with you, Katie, so I guess we're even. Doesn't mean you don't need to follow the Constitution of your state, which right now you are not doing. Big surprise. Rules for thee, but not for me. Now, this is after, let's see here. Where was this? Okay, here we go. So state law requires agency leaders to be confirmed by the Senate and says they cannot work for more than a year without Senate approval. Hobbs lost a court case. Oh, by the way, first of all, before I finish this, Hobbs said her office is still working on other agency directors, but cannot answer a question about how long an interim director could serve without being confirmed. So 2 people that were interim directors quit because they knew they weren't going to get confirmed. So again, I don't know the answer, she said. If someone's upset about it, they can sue me again. Wow, that sounds mature, doesn't it? Again, state law requires agency leaders to be confirmed by the Senate and says they cannot work for more than a year without Senate approval. Hobbs lost a court case brought by Senate President Warren Peterson when she tried to evade that confirmation process 2 years ago by appointing directors, but giving them a different title. So she's already going against the law. She's already fine with skirting the law as long as it benefits her. But when it comes to something that could, not affect or not go her way, well, then it's just hate and bile. Again, surprising. No? Yeah, that's right. It's not surprising at all. Liberals are very much rules for thee, not for me. All right. Moving along. A North Carolina justice. Now, so this is the Rolling Stone. This is in Rolling Stone, which tells you pretty much what you should know right now. First of all, let me just read the title here. North Carolina justice speaks out about Republicans' effort to steal her seat. Subhead, the fight over a 2024 Supreme Court race and the future of American elections rages on. This is by Tessa Stewart, and it was submitted this morning at 6 a.m., apparently, in Rolling Stone. Now, the picture of this is I'm guessing it's a courthouse, and this lady standing outside in her black judicial robes. Now, I mean, this is about as stupid as when Obama had all those doctors visit the White House, and then right before the cameras went on, when the press was there, he gave them all white coats. They gave them all white coats to wear. They were all dressed up in their, fancy suits and ties and whatnot. Nope, gave them white coats to wear. Why? Because the optics meant that, well, wow, these people must be smart. They're wearing white coats. Now, in this case, it's meant to give this woman, Allison Riggs is her name, an appearance of she's a justice because she's wearing a black robe. And of course, she's not looking at the camera. It's one of those sculpted shots. She kind of looks like this. It's a sculpted shot. I hate that crap. We talked about that with Walton Goggins on the cover of some magazine several months ago. When he's sitting in the chair, leaned way back and looking over the side of it. I'm like, what is this? Or when people cover one eye. Why? Why would you do that stupid setup shot? It looks so stupid. The hell's wrong with people? Anyway. All right. Let's see here. They're talking about this election. Here's the thing. So a few weeks after the November 2024 election, Allison Riggs and her husband were over at her parents' house in Durham, North Carolina for dinner. Riggs, a candidate for state Supreme Court, was still waiting for her race to be called, but she wasn't overly concerned with the delay. A former elections lawyer, she knew that in close contests, the final results can often take days or weeks. No, they don't. And this race was close. On the evening of November 4th, Riggs trailed by 10,000 votes before she ultimately closed the gap, strangely enough, winning by a margin of just 734 out of more than 5.5 million ballots cast. Well, isn't that interesting? It kind of reminds me of the Dino Rossi-Chris Gregoire election. Riggs, who was already serving in the North Carolina Supreme Court after being appointed by Governor Roy Cooper to finish out the term of a retiring justice, assumed the counting and recounting would run its course, and at some point the election would be certified. But 178 days later, so just about 6 months, the race still hasn't been called. The ongoing saga represents both a breathtaking escalation in the GOP's war on free and fair elections. Oh, it's the GOP's war. Got it. Because, they've very clearly been going after registering illegal people to vote and having dead people vote. And, they've opposed voter rolls being cleaned off. Huh. Wait, no, they haven't. That's the Democrats. Weird. Anyway, let's see here. That night in Durham at her parents' house was the first moment Riggs got the sense that this wasn't going to be a normal, protracted race. Offhand, her mother mentioned that she had received some post-election, quote, junk mail, unquote, from the Republican Party of North Carolina. It said, "Your vote may be the subject of a protest. Scan this QR code," she remembers. My dad, of course, is like, "Don't scan that QR code. You might get a virus on your phone." Clearly a technological genius, that one. When she saw it, Riggs knew exactly what the mailer was, and she couldn't believe her opponent was challenging her own mother's vote. She'd later learn he was challenging her father's vote, too. Riggs's parents were among more than 65,000 North Carolina voters whose ballots her rival was seeking to have thrown out after those votes were lawfully cast and accepted by the state's Board of Elections. Now, they don't tell you the rest of the story until much later in the story itself. So that's interesting. You read that and you're going, "Those rascally Republicans." In the run-up to last year's election, observers warned that Trump was contemplating a series of novel strategies to call the 2024 election results into question. Yeah, given what happened in 2020, I would be kind of thinking about that too, considering y'all Democrats, which Rolling Stone is very liberal, pretty much guaranteed stole that election. Anyway, all around the country, Republicans were taking control of election boards with the power to certify or refuse to certify election results. Taking control, you mean like, so the impression you get is they're walking in there with their guns going, "This is my election board now." No, they were voted in and appointed in, but, God forbid you actually tell the whole story. And on the campaign trail, Trump was raising questions about the legitimacy of certain ballots, including those cast by the military and overseas voters and their children, some of whom are citizens but have never lived in the U.S. That is not the ones he was going after, but nice try. Trump didn't end up using any of those tactics in the end. He didn't need to, as he won the 2024 election handily without them. And I bet that hurt for them to write. Because here's the thing. The cheat was so far off. There was so much support coming in for Trump. They knew they couldn't use the same tricks they did in 2020. They couldn't. They would have been really screwed. Let me put it this way. If they had cheated again and stole the election again with the idiot, it would have been horrible because you would have seen the second Civil War break out like that. 100% guaranteed. No doubt about it. All right. Let's keep reading here. But Republican Court of Appeals Judge Jefferson Griffin, Riggs' opponent in the state Supreme Court, appears to have taken a page out of the book Trump threw away. Griffin has refused to concede even after 2 recounts confirmed Riggs' narrow victory. Okay, so time out. Recounts. We talked about this sometimes. If I have a pile of ballots, right, and I want to recount those ballots, if I just take those ballots and put them back through the counting machine the same way I did the first time, guess what? Chances are they're probably going to come up the same way. Doesn't matter how many times I do it, they're going to go through the same way. Now, until and unless I look at those ballots and go, this is weird. There's this weird little squiggly dealy that's on this one ballot. I think it was, some kind of error in the paper. And, that's weird. It's present on 300 out of these 500 ballots that we're scanning. It's present on 300 of them. And weirdly enough, all these ballots voted for the exact same candidates. All these ballots had the exact same, they had perfect ovals. They were filled in perfectly. The signatures on these ballots appear to have been written by the exact same person, judging by the penmanship. I wonder if maybe we ought to have a look at these. That's a forensic audit. So recounts by themselves don't do diddly squat. They don't. Especially a machine recount. A hand recount, okay, maybe. You might find something weird, but again, unless you're doing a forensic recount, you're pissing in the wind. You are literally laying down the exact same set of cards that you've been playing all night and expecting to change it. It's not going to happen. Anyway, instead, he filed a lawsuit arguing the State Board of Elections improperly allowed 60,000 people to register without providing their driver's license or social security numbers, and an additional 5,500 overseas voters improperly cast ballots without presenting a photo ID. In January, the Supreme Court of North Carolina, the court on which Riggs continues to serve, as all this shakes out, intervened to protect certification of the election and allow Griffin's challenges to proceed through the courts. Griffin recused himself from the matter. Now, let me put it this way. If before Trump got back into office and sued because of, some of these lawsuits that he's won, I guarantee you if this had been done last year or in 2020, they would not have put that part in the parentheses at the end about him recusing himself. They would have left that in there and conveniently forgot to put it in. Weird. So the dispute has been slowly working its way through the courts since then, leaving a cascade of conflicting rulings in its wake. The State Board of Elections unanimously upheld the election result, and the local Superior Court dismissed Griffin's case. Before the North Carolina Court of Appeals, the court on which Griffin himself sits ruled in their colleagues' favor, declaring some 60,000 votes should be thrown out unless these voters came forward to verify their identities. Griffin did not vote on the matter. So again, he stayed out of it, which is what he should do. He should have recused himself. And I think so did the other gal, which is good. That decision was appealed to the state Supreme Court, which upheld it in part, declaring a smaller number, a few thousand votes, might be invalid. A federal district court has now stepped in, saying the state Supreme Court's order, while staying the state Supreme Court's order, while a judge considers the case. That judge, a Trump appointee, has indicated he plans to issue a ruling in the coming days. Okay, so doesn't matter whether it's 65,000 votes or 60,000 votes, whatever it is, or a few thousand. The point is even a few thousand could swing that race. And if there was a few thousand that were completely wrong, that were completely fraudulent, then yeah, that's entirely possible. All right. when you talk, so they talk about Riggs and how she grew up. Riggs grew up in rural West Virginia, the eldest of 4 children. Her father was one, and one of her brothers served in the military and were deployed overseas. Whoop-de-doo. Riggs herself got an undergraduate degree in microbiology, a master's in history, and finally a law degree at the University of Florida. Who cares? As a law student after the 2000 election, Riggs became involved in the effort to restore voting rights to disenfranchised Floridians. So she's a diehard liberal. That's all you need to know right there. And this next part really gives it away. Quote, when you talk about the Florida election in 2000, you think, oh, 537 votes decided who became president of the United States. But in reality, there were tens of thousands of Floridians who were never allowed to cast a ballot because they had been permanently disenfranchised after a youthful mistake or an interaction with the criminal justice system. So, in other words, they broke the law and lost their voting rights. This gal apparently wants them to get their voting rights back. Why? Because criminals, and even, reformed criminals, tend to vote, from what I've seen, and again, this I can't point to one right now because I don't have it in front of me, they tend to vote Democrat. Weird. Huh. Now she's fighting to ensure that voters who lawfully cast votes in November aren't retroactively stripped of their right to vote. There's more to stake in her election alone if Griffin and the Republican Party of North Carolina are allowed to reverse the outcome. No, they're not. It's not reversing the outcome. It's making sure the outcome is legitimate. Riggs says, if this unconstitutional process happens, the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't ever put it back in. People who would want to overturn election results that they don't like in the future have the green light. They wouldn't have a federal court saying, nope, we're not going to put up with this. Okay, but again, they're not trying to strip people of the right to vote. They're merely saying, Mr. Riggs or Griffin here, which, by the way, they never talked to Mr. Griffin, weirdly enough. Rolling Stone doesn't. How odd. How odd. They never get his side of the story. And yet there's no bias in the media. So here's the thing. Griffin and his team are not trying to take people's voting rights away, not necessarily. Now, if people illegally voted, then yes, that would be a good reason to take their votes away. Because again, they illegally voted. But the bigger problem is this, like we just said. If somebody voted more than once and then falsified the vote by, signing a different name, or they say they ballot harvested and then took those ballots and copied them and then put it under a different name because, there was a person 125 years ago with this name still on the registration, still on the voter rolls. So we're going to have this, long dead person. They're going to vote for this person, or we'll just photocopy it and send it in and they'll just throw it right in the stacks of ballots, right? Throw it right in. That's what they're trying to figure out. If the votes are ruled to be legitimate and if they're seen and, they can prove that Mr. or Mrs. Riggs rather won, okay, great. If that's shown, great. If Mr. Griffin doesn't concede, then I bet he will have some people, going, hey, you got what you wanted, knock this crap off. But if they don't do this and potential fraud is allowed to continue, then that's a major problem too. She talks about unconstitutional stuff. Well, how is it unconstitutional to want to know whether the votes that are being cast in an election, which, by the way, voting is one of our rights, how is it unconstitutional to want to know if that is actually a legitimate vote? I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. And of course, they go on and talk about, Rolling Stone has zero credibility when it comes to things because they're so blatantly biased. As this fight rages on, let's see here. The U.S. House of Representatives just passed the SAVE Act, legislation that Princeton history professor and Rolling Stone contributor Sean Wilentz has called the most extraordinary attack on voting rights in American history and an attempt to destroy American democracy as we know it. So he's a professor of history, but he can't figure out that we have a republic, not a democracy. Anybody else a little skeptical of this dude's degree? And how is it an attack on voting rights to make sure that if you're voting, you are actually allowed to vote? I'm curious about that. How is it unreasonable and how is it an attack on voting rights to make sure that the person who is voting, if I say, or if I go and I vote as, Chris Richman, that I need to be able to prove that I am in fact Chris Richman and not some other dude from down the road pretending to be Chris Richman, or that I haven't voted twice. Makes sense, doesn't it? But again, you read Rolling Stone and wow. Riggs, for her part, is digging in. I'm committed to fighting day in and day out in the federal court until we get this right, she says. However long it takes, however hard I need to fight. I won this election. The voters spoke, and the voters who put their trust in me continue serving in my constitutional office. Now this is my chance to keep the faith with them and fight for what they hired me to fight for, which is their constitutional rights. Okay, so what if they do another recount? They find out that these, and they can prove it. That's the other part. It needs to be locked down, rock solid proof. Okay? If they find that there are illegitimate votes in there, it needs to be very transparent. So I would say to Mr. Griffin, if you find that, y'all damn well better be super transparent about this. Now, if that happens, if it's super transparent and it's found out that, say, 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 votes, the majority of which went to this gal, were illegitimate, were illegal, were whatever, and it turns the election, the election actually was Griffin won, well, then I would hope Miss Riggs will acknowledge that. I kind of doubt it, though. Just basing it, I kind of doubt it. We'll see. All right. Let's see here. What else? I don't really care about that. Well, we can talk to it later. That stupid the liberals having a cow about Trump talking about how, well, if your kid gets $2 instead of 20, grow up, people. Okay. Nothing is free. So if we have to take a year or 2 years where we don't get everything we want, for Christmas, for birthdays, for whatever it is, we don't get everything we want. If we can't live through that, then I'm sorry, we don't deserve to be a nation. If we've gotten that soft, that's scary. All right. Anyway, that's crazy. And of course the liberals are all over that. I love President Trump, but dude, and I mean, you're right. He's 100% right. But words, the way you say things, have meaning. They do. Okay. Let's go on. Oh, this is interesting. So let's see. Do I want to do this now? I'm going to skip something a little bit here. I wasn't going to do this until later, but I really don't have time not to do it. The U.S. government has reached a settlement with Ashley Babbitt, the family of Ashley Babbitt. This is good. It's about time. This is the way it should have been right away. And the only thing now, of course, is her killer needs to be brought to justice. 100%. Michael Byrd. He needs to be brought to justice. He needs to be tried and convicted. Again, he needs to be tried. I can't, there was no reason for him to shoot her. None. It was an absolute cluster. He killed her in cold blood. And again, I just pray that he is brought to justice, because wow, that needs to happen big time. All right. I don't know what I was looking at there. Hold on just a second. Weird. Anyway, JD Vance, real quick, guys. Sorry. We'll do a couple more things and we'll be done. Actually, we talked about Trump wanting to defund the ATF. Good. Yeah. Washington Attorney General Nick Brown has decided to not only keep going with his stupid little instructions to illegal immigrants, he's doubling down on it. Oh, yeah. Yep, even though he's being investigated by the Department of Justice, he has just posted up to his X page, now available, a Know Your Rights flyer on civil immigration enforcement in 19 languages. Please share it with your friends, family, and community. Katie Davis Court retweeted that, saying, Washington Attorney General Nick Brown says the state's website has been updated with instructions that show how illegal immigrants can evade ICE arrest. He's asking that these flyers be shared across the state. This comes after Border Czar Tom Homan signaled there would be more arrests for sanctuary state officials who harbor illegal aliens. Oh, please, God, let them get this clown. He is an absolute, as bad as Sideshow Bob was, this guy might be worse. I don't know. He is an absolute putz. All right, next up. We're running low on time here, so I'll have to kind of make this somewhat quick. Let's see, we already did that. So we can get out of there. Real quick, I want to get to this. We'll talk about this next piece on Monday. JD Vance, I love this guy. JD Vance talking about how Marco Rubio now has 4 roles. He's the Secretary of State with Mike Waltz moving to UN ambassador. He's going to be taking over temporarily as National Security Advisor, acting National Security Advisor. He's also the acting administrator for the USAID. He's also the acting archivist. And so he's got 4 roles. And this was posted by Burgess Everett. And JD Vance retweeted that and said, I think he could take on a bit more. If only there was a job opening for a devout Catholic, referring, of course, to the Pope. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love JD Vance's, I love his his comedic wit. I do. I think he is going to be a fantastic president, and I cannot wait to have him be one. I look forward to it every day. All right, guys, this has been segment 2 of the Chris Richman Show for Friday, May 2nd, 2025. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And, of course, as always, God bless you.